Dr. Elias Thorne hated the dark, yet was inexorably drawn to it. He was an eccentric historian, a researcher who dedicated his life to stripping away legends and whispers, turning them into dry, carefully documented facts. This time, the fact awaiting him lay deep within the Scottish Highlands, a place where light seemed to have been forgotten long ago. Blackwood Manor. The request came in a letter written in a shaky hand on ancient parchment, unsigned, with only a single line. "Find Evelyn. She went into the dark, and the dark still waits." Attached was a heavy, rust-stained iron key and a faded photograph. A young woman with eyes too large for her face, standing before a grim gray stone house draped in ivy like a veil. This was Evelyn Blackwood, who had vanished mysteriously in 1957. Elias had driven for 3 hours through thick mist and over barren hills. When he arrived, Blackwood appeared like a festering wound. It was an outdated Gothic mansion with sharp gables and small windows like empty sockets staring up at the gray sky. There was no fence, no gate, just a cracked gravel driveway leading straight into a deadly silence. The cold here was not the natural chill of the mountains, but a feeling of bone-deep ancient coldness, as if the house had sucked all warmth and joy from its surroundings. "Welcome to where everything is dead," Elias muttered, holding his old leather suitcase. The heavy key fit the oak front door lock perfectly. The dry, metallic clunk echoed, the only sound breaking the silence. As the door swung open, an ancient smell rushed into Elias's nostrils, a combination of mold, dust, and a sweet, sickly odor like rotting lily of the valley. Inside, the house was a maze of darkness. The scarce light from the windows was blocked by heavy, decaying curtains. The main entrance was a large marble-floored hall where portraits of the Blackwood family hung askew, their glassy eyes seemingly moving with Elias's every step. He flicked on his flashlight, its yellow beam dancing over the furniture covered in white sheets, resembling ghosts gathering for a secret meeting. "Evelyn Blackwood," Elias called softly, his voice a meaningless whisper in the vast space. "The girl who vanished 4 decades ago." According to the few police records he found, Evelyn, 21, was the youngest daughter of a decaying noble line. She was known to have a sensitive soul, often sketching strange drawings of shadowy figures and moving vines. One night in October, she went to bed and never woke up. The window and bedroom door were locked from the inside. There were no signs of forced entry or struggle, only emptiness. Elias found Evelyn's room on the 2nd floor at the end of the main corridor. The wooden door had a name crudely carved into it, "The Wing." He used the second key, found in his coat pocket, to open the door. The first thing he noticed was a stark difference in temperature. Evelyn's room was warmer, almost stifling. And the second thing, which made Elias, a man proud of his sharp intellect, shiver, was the color. While the rest of Blackwood was submerged in the gray and brown tones of decay, this room was jade green and cream yellow. It was perfectly preserved, without a speck of dust. The vanity still held a perfume bottle. The bed sheets were still neatly tucked. It did not look like a room abandoned for 40 years. It looked like someone had just stepped out 5 minutes ago. Elias approached the mahogany writing desk. On it lay a leather-bound diary, moss green, open to the last page. He picked up the diary, feeling the coldness of the leather cover beneath his fingers. October 28th, 1957. They say it's a dream, but how can a dream be so cold? The dark veil is getting thicker. It's not a person, it's an absence, the absence of light. It just stands in the corner, where I can't see it, but I know it is there. It doesn't want my body, Elias. It wants the thread. It wants what I hide. My parents say I'm crazy, but I see them starting to look at the corner too, if only for a fleeting moment. Today, I drew them in the mirror. I drew them on the ceiling. I drew them so they couldn't enter other places. But I can't draw the shadow behind. The shadow has no shape, only hunger. Tonight, it called my name, not with a voice, but with a soundless echo, a painful silence. I have to go. I must cut the thread before it pulls me inside. I have hidden it in the safest place, a place no one can see, not even it. If someone finds this book, please do not look into the dark for too long. It will look back at you. I hear scratching. It's crawling on the rug. It doesn't walk. It slides. It's under the bed. I locked the door. I locked the window. But I can't lock away what is inside. The writing ended abruptly, with a streaked, smeared line of ink, as if the pen had been violently snatched from Evelyn's hand. Elias put the diary down, trying to steady his breathing. He was a man of science, not of fairy tales about dark veils or threads. But this room, it was physical evidence that science could not explain. He checked the corner Evelyn had mentioned. It was completely empty, save for an indistinct smudge on the wallpaper. "What is the thread?" he muttered. Just as Elias was about to turn away, his eyes caught another impossibility. On the windowsill, a small glass vase held 3 white hydrangeas. They were not withered. They were perfectly fresh, with tiny dewdrops still clinging to their petals. Elias grabbed one. The petals were soft and cool. 41 years. The air in the room was sealed. It was impossible. The moment he touched the flower, a sound came from beneath the floor. Scratch, scratch, scratch. It didn't sound like a mouse or the wind. It sounded like fingernails scraping on hardwood, slowly, purposefully. The sound emanated from the floor, directly beneath his feet. Elias took a step back, his heart pounding against his ribs. He looked down at the diary again. It's crawling on the rug. It's under the bed. As Elias stood frozen, the flashlight on the desk suddenly snapped off. The darkness descended thick and heavy, not an absence of light, but the presence of something covering the light. And in that frigid darkness, Elias felt a slow, gentle breath ghost past his ear. It wasn't cold, but a little warm, and it carried the sweet, sickly scent of rotting lily of the valley. "It wants the thread, Elias," a voice whispered, not with sound, but as a direct feeling in his mind. Elias spun around, the flashlight still in his hand, but useless. In the absolute darkness, he saw nothing, but he knew something was standing inches away from him. The sickly sweet smell was now overpowering. He slammed the flashlight reflexively against the desk. The light suddenly flared, just enough for him to catch a glimpse. Not Evelyn, not a ghost in white sheets. It was a faint black curtain, like mist, but it had thin, wispy strands that wove the shape of a tall, thin woman. It had no face, only a colorless void where the eyes should be. And as the flickering light died, the shadow managed to extend a hand. The hand was not made of flesh and bone, but of twisted strands of darkness, and it was reaching for the diary on the desk.
Elias screamed, snatched the diary, and backed towards the door. He felt a physical pressure shove against his chest, as if he had run through a giant spider web. He yanked the door open, fled into the dark hallway, and locked Evelyn's room with the rusty key, leaving the 3 fresh hydrangeas and the shapeless shadow inside. He leaned against the cold wall, gasping for breath. He had come to Blackwood seeking facts, but this truth could not be explained by paperwork or police reports. Elias looked down at the diary in his hand. He knew he couldn't call the police or anyone else. He had stepped into this trap himself, where the nameless shadow had waited for over 40 decades. "I have to find the thread," he told himself, trying to regain composure. He looked down the corridor, where the darkness seemed to be gathering thicker, like a dark liquid lying in wait. From Evelyn's room, the scratching had stopped.
Dr. Elias Thorne was not a brave man, but he was a stubborn researcher. The panic quickly gave way to a feverish need to know. Evelyn Blackwood's diary was clutched firmly in his hand. It wasn't just proof of the supernatural. It was a fire starter. He found the cellar entrance hidden beneath a rotting Persian rug at the end of the great hall. The thick oak door's hinges shrieked like metal being torn, and a musty, pungent smell wafted up from below. Elias lit his oil lantern. Its trembling yellow flame was all that separated him from the endless darkness of Blackwood. He holstered the pistol, not to fight ghosts, but to create an illusion of safety, a fragile link to the world of reason. He began to descend the spiral stone steps, each step echoing eerily in the confined space. The deeper he went, the thicker the air became, carrying a scent of old earth, rusted iron, and, most terrifyingly, the smell of rotting lily of the valley, the scent he had detected in Evelyn's room. "It's here," Elias murmured, "or it passed through here." The cellar opened up. It was surprisingly vast, constructed from rough granite blocks. The lantern light was only enough to illuminate a small circle around Elias. Surrounding him were empty wine racks, decaying wooden shelves, and countless oak chests and boxes stacked high, covered in cobwebs and the dust of time. Blackwood was not just a mansion. It was a decaying archive filled with the forgotten possessions of a rotten lineage. Elias walked between the narrow aisles. The silence here was different from the silence upstairs. It was a sullen silence, as if the space was listening and waiting. He began to inspect the chests. Most contained old utilities, moth-eaten evening wear, or tarnished silver cutlery. But in the deepest corner of the cellar, where the ceiling was water-stained and mold grew in grotesque patterns on the stone, Elias found a small room protected by an iron door. Carved on the door was a strange symbol, a spider weaving its web around an eye. This was the archive vault. The third key, in Elias's coat pocket, a smaller brass one, matched the lock. When the iron door creaked open, the frigid air inside rushed out, bringing with it a scent of old paper, dried ink, and something akin to ashes. Inside was a small, circular room built like a safety vault. Around the walls were shelves filled with bound documents, large books, and file boxes of family records. Elias quickly began his search. He wasn't looking for gold or treasures. He was looking for history, the history that had been excised from public records. Finally, he pulled out a large, heavy leather-bound ledger with a title written in complex Gothic script, Liber Tenebrae, Chronicle of the Foundation. He opened the book. It wasn't a diary. It was a chronicle of horrors. It was written by multiple hands, spanning from the 18th century to the early 20th, each with different handwriting. The section closest to the present was written by Lord Alistair Blackwood, Evelyn's father. May 12, 1957. Alistair Blackwood writes, "The agreement has been violated. We became too complacent. We thought offering the annual submission was enough to appease the Shadow Weaver. But it has changed. It has learned, and it has grown. It no longer wants only the veil. It wants the final thread. My wife, Agnes, could not endure it and took her own life. She could not bear to see the shadow standing behind our daughter. She was a weak link. Now only Evelyn remains. She is the most sensitive, the one capable of seeing things most clearly, and therefore her thread is the most fragile, but also the strongest. I must do something. If Evelyn's thread is severed while she is conscious, her soul will be drawn into the unseen weave forever. I will lock her up, protect her, until I find a way to nullify the ancestral curse. The curse is not to take lives. It is to collect the emptiness." The next passage was torn out, leaving only a corner of paper with a single sentence. The sewer made a mistake. He wove a net too wide. Elias turned back, seeking the first author of the chronicle. His name was Lord Silas Blackwood, 1789. Silas Blackwood had built the mansion on land believed to be sacred or cursed by ancient Celts. He was not a spiritualist, but an ambitious alchemist who sought to weave light so he could see the future. He wrote, "I found the rift, the place where the world of form and the world of shadow touch. I called its name, the Weaver, and it answered. It promised me infinite insight in exchange for a network of energy, a thread from each generation. I agreed. I will take their suffering, and in return, I will see the light of the future."
Elias stopped reading. This was the source of the curse. The Shadow Weaver was not a ghost. It was a primordial entity that had been summoned. And it needed energy, called the thread, from the Blackwood bloodline. He returned to Evelyn's entry. "I must cut the thread before it pulls me inside." The thread was not physical. The thread was spirit, was perception. Evelyn had realized she couldn't stop the Shadow Weaver, but she could sever her link to it. Elias recalled the most crucial detail in Evelyn's room: the 3 perfectly fresh hydrangeas. Hydrangeas don't stay fresh for 40 years. It's a sign of sustained life, a preserved link. Suddenly, Elias felt a physical change in pressure within the vault. The lantern flame momentarily flared intensely, then was savagely extinguished. This time, it wasn't equipment failure. It was the intervention of the Shadow Weaver. The darkness in the vault was not just dark. It was a physical mass. Elias heard a small hiss, like silk being torn. His flashlight was still on the writing desk upstairs. He still had the pistol, but it was meaningless. In the profound darkness, Elias felt the smell of rotting lily of the valley spread throughout the room, now so strong he felt nauseous. "You have gone too deep, Elias Thorne." The soundless voice echoed in his mind, cold but with delight. "The thread belongs to me. All of it belongs to me. You cannot understand." Elias backed away, his hand fumbling on the bookshelves. He tried to recall Evelyn's last line. "I have hidden it in the safest place. a place no one can see, not even it. Cannot be seen, meaning not a physical location, but a spiritual location. Elias's eyes had adjusted to the dark, or perhaps the weaver itself was allowing him to see. He made out the faint outlines of the room. And then he saw it. In the center of the room, not on a shelf or in a chest, but framed on a small marble plaque affixed to the wall. It was a charcoal sketch, a simple, rough portrait of Evelyn Blackwood. The portrait was unremarkable, just her face with her two large eyes. But what froze Elias were the 3 hydrangeas, delicately drawn in white ink overlaid on Evelyn's hair. They emitted a faint, almost imperceptible light.
Not real flowers, but a drawing. Elias understood. Evelyn didn't hide an object. She cut the thread, her physical link, by transferring it, by weaving it into her own art. The fresh hydrangeas in the room upstairs were a metaphor. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The sound was not coming from the floor. It was coming from the wall opposite Elias. It was trying to claw its way through the thick stone wall. With a desperate effort, Elias snatched the sketch. His fingers touched the cold glass of the frame. The moment he did, the stone wall before him cracked. A small, pitch-black fissure appeared, and from that fissure, a thin, black arm, woven from strands of darkness, shot out. Elias screamed, turning and running. He lunged through the iron door, slamming it shut without locking it, and began sprinting back up the spiral staircase. As he ran, a voice resonated through the entire cellar, not in words, but in emotion. Rage, hunger, betrayal. "You cannot keep it, Elias. You have become a thread. The weave awaits you." When Elias reached the great hall, his flashlight was still flickering, left on the desk in incensity. He ran to it, snatched it up, and shone it down the corridor. The path to Evelyn's room was now blocked by a black cloud taller than a man. It wasn't static. It swirled, thick and noisy like a miniature storm. Elias knew he couldn't stay in Blackwood any longer. He had found what the weaver wanted, and now himself had been marked. He clutched the diary and the sketch to his chest. He needed to get out, back into the world of light, to decipher what he had just found, before Blackwood swallowed him whole. But as he approached the front door, he saw another terrifying sight. The oak door had vanished. In its place was only a smooth, cold stone wall with no lock, no hinges. Blackwood Manor had sealed itself shut, and Elias Thorne was locked inside with the Shadow Weaver. Dr. Elias Thorne recoiled from the smooth stone wall. The location that should have been the entrance door was now only cold granite. "Impossible," he whispered, clawing at the stone face, searching for an invisible seam or hinge. But there was nothing. Blackwood had sealed itself, a stone prison, controlled by a will beyond human comprehension. He turned, clutching the diary and the sketch. Now he was no longer a researcher. He was prey. "You have become a thread," the Shadow Weaver's soundless voice echoed in his mind. Its excitement was the most ghastly thing. "You touched the link. Now you are part of the weave."
Elias ran upstairs, bypassing the corridor blocked by the black cloud. He knew he needed a place where he could temporarily resist the dominance of the dark, a place with light, even if artificial. He found the library, a large room with towering bookshelves that reached the ceiling. Elias quickly found an old lighter in his pocket and lit 2 thick wax candles. The candlelight was weak, but enough to push back the physical shadow that was trying to crawl through the door cracks. The library became his temporary base. Elias spread the Liber Tenebrae, Chronicle, on the table. He needed to find a way to destroy or use the thread that Evelyn had hidden. Evelyn's sketch with the 3 delicate white hydrangeas was placed carefully beside it. When Elias looked closely, he realized the flowers were not just drawings. They were the perfect antithesis to the Shadow Weaver's darkness. Hydrangeas symbolized purity, truth. It was a spiritual shield woven with concentration and perception.
He turned to the last entry in Lord Alistair Blackwood's chronicle. October 20th, 1957. Alistair writes, "The emptiness has come. I look into Evelyn's eyes and see nothing but the void. It took her soul, but her thread, her last link to the world of light, remains intact. The weaver cannot take it because she entrusted it to art. A desperate act. It cannot see what is hidden in creation. The solution is not murder. The curse is woven with will, not blood. It can only be destroyed if one weaves a stronger web, a thread that penetrates its unseen weave and severs the primal knot. Silas hid the knot. It is not in the cellar. It is in the core, where he created the rift. The core is locked by 3 oaths, 3 things that bound the Shadow Weaver to this family." 3 oaths, Elias muttered. He turned back to Evelyn's diary. The diary was only a warning message, but perhaps it held a clue. He suddenly remembered the original letter. "Find Evelyn. She went into the dark, and the dark still waits." If Evelyn went into the dark, perhaps she tried to find the knot to sever the curse herself. The noise began. It was a thin, distant sound, but it made Elias's hair stand on end. A child's cry. It came from the direction of the corridor where the black cloud was swirling. "The weave is spinning your regrets, Elias," the soundless voice echoed. "You regret coming here. You regret what you have lost." The sound grew closer, now interspersed with the low wailing of a woman. Elias knew it was an illusion. The Shadow Weaver was using the isolation and darkness to agitate his mind. He looked at Evelyn's sketch. 3 hydrangeas. He had to focus on that. "It's not real," he told himself, repeating it like a mantra. "It's not real." He continued turning pages in the chronicle, searching for the 3 oaths. He found a crude hand-drawn map by Lord Silas, the creator of the curse. The map depicted the mansion and 3 spots marked with the spider eye symbol. The oath of sight, visio, in the highest room of the tower where Silas sought to see the future. The oath of hearing, vox, in the music room where the silence of the weaver was honored. The oath of touch, corpus, in the chapel where Silas sacrificed his touch. These 3 oaths were the doors leading to the core, which held the primal nut. Elias snapped the book shut. He needed to act fast before the darkness swallowed the library whole. The noise was now right outside the door. Elias heard the doorknob slowly turning and the sound of old wood warping. He grabbed the pistol, knowing it was useless. He had to get out of here. He fled the library, heading toward the main staircase. The moment he stepped out, he saw the most horrifying sight. The black cloud at the end of the corridor was no longer a black cloud. It had transformed into a thick, black silk curtain hanging from ceiling to floor, and it was moving. And from that curtain, a tall, thin female figure stepped out. It was not Evelyn, but the veil mentioned in the chronicle. It had the form of Lady Agnes Blackwood, Evelyn's mother, with long, ashen hair and deep, empty eyes.
"Son," Agnes, or the Veil, said, her voice both a thin sigh and the hiss of air. "Why do you try to pull the thread back? Don't you see the emptiness is peace?" Elias backed away, his eyes fixed on Evelyn's sketch in his hand. It was his shield. "You are not Agnes," Elias tried to keep his voice steady. "You are an illusion, a part of the web that the weaver spun." The Veil advanced, her bony hand reaching out. "The Shadow Weaver is hungry. I only want your peace. Give back the thread. Let her go." As the illusion's hand reached for the air where the sketch was, the 3 hydrangeas on the drawing flashed. That pure white light was not brilliant, but it had a physical repelling force. The Veil shrieked, its form twisting like burning paper, and it quickly retreated back into the black curtain at the end of the corridor. Elias realized the sketch was not just a clue, it was a tool, an amulet. He quickly ran up the staircase, heading for the tower, the location of the Oath of Sight. As he reached the 3rd floor, the corridor was covered in thin mist, and he heard rummaging sounds coming from the rooms. "It's looking for me," Elias gasped. He found the door leading up to the tower. This door was not sealed, but it was secured by a complicated lock. Just then he heard a rustle right behind him. Elias turned, the pistol in hand, but he saw something even more terrifying than the Veil. It was Lord Silas Blackwood, the ancient alchemist, standing at the top of the stairs. But he was not a ghost. He was a bizarrely elongated creature, his body woven from strands of darkness and decaying matter. His eyes were colorless voids, but his mouth was unnaturally wide, filled with sharp, needle-like teeth. "I will lead you to the knot, Elias Thorne," Silas, or whatever impersonated him, said, his voice grating like stone. "I will show you how to weave your own web, but first you must sacrifice your sight." Silas reached out his hand. The hand was fleshless, just twisted strands of darkness, and it touched Elias's eyes. Elias screamed in agony, not from physical pain, but from the absolute coldness of the darkness trying to pierce his pupils. He fell to the floor, but even as he writhed, he did not release the sketch. He gritted his teeth and focused on the 3 hydrangeas. "Light, light," he said in his mind. His concentration on the flowers caused the small white light on the sketch to flare for a brief instant. Silas shrieked, backing away, his empty eyes seemingly scorched by that spiritual light. Elias rolled away, coughing, his vision blurry. He knew he only had minutes before the Shadow Weaver attacked again or tried to weave another, stronger illusion. He stood up, aimed straight for the tower door. He had seen the first oath.
He had to unlock the core. But first, he had to deal with this lock and with the relentless fury of the Weaver spinning its horrific web around him.
Elias lay curled on the cold stone floor, the searing pain from the Silas illusion's touch still throbbing. It had tried to steal his sight, seeking to pull him into the weave of illusion and emptiness. He quickly got up, gasping. Behind him, the tower door leading to the summit waited. The door was made of dark walnut, secured by a heavy brass lock. The lock had no ordinary keyhole, but a complex mechanism with 3 superimposed lenses, each engraved with intricate alchemical symbols. "The oath of sight," Elias muttered, looking at the lock. He understood. Silas Blackwood did not lock the door with metal, but with a truth about vision. He opened the Liber Tenebrae Chronicle, turning to Silas's crude drawing. Next to the spider/eye symbol of the first oath, a note was written in ancient Latin: Tria oculi veritatis, videre, prevedere, sentire. 3 eyes of truth, to see, to foresee, and to feel. He immediately grasped it. The 3 lenses corresponded to these 3 types of vision. Videre, to see. Physical sight, requiring a factual image. Predere, to foresee. Prophetic sight, requiring an image from the weave. Sentire, to feel. Spiritual sight, requiring an image from the soul. He already had the image for the 3rd type, Evelyn's hydrangea sketch. It was her purity, her spiritual thread, the truth the shadow weaver could not see.
He turned his head, his gaze sweeping the 3rd-floor corridor. The mist and the rustling were still there, but no illusions attacked. They were waiting. Elias looked at the lock. For the first lens, videre, he needed a real object from the mansion. He recalled Evelyn's room, the 3 perfectly fresh hydrangeas. They were the only physical truth, unrotted. Elias couldn't go back to Evelyn's room, but he could use their image. He placed his finger on the first lens, concentrating on recalling the shape, color, and the very absurdity of those fresh flowers. Click! A small sound. The first lens rotated and locked into place. Now the second lens, prevedere, to foresee, an image from the weave. The shadow weaver was always trying to show him horrors. He needed a glimpse of the horrific truth of Blackwood. He quickly flipped back through the Liber Tenebrae. He found a drawing in red ink depicting a tall, thin figure weaving threads from pale, smoke-like souls. That was the shadow weaver itself. This drawing was a prophecy of the curse. He placed this page over the second lens. Click! The second lens snapped shut. The final lens, sentire, to feel. He pulled out Evelyn's sketch, 3 white hydrangeas shimmering like dew. He placed the drawing over the lens. Crash! Not the sound of a lock, but of metal being ripped apart. The lock shattered, revealing a tear-shaped keyhole. The tower door slowly opened, revealing a dark, winding stone staircase plunged into shadow. You unlocked the physical lock, but your sight is already choked. The soundless voice echoed, this time closer, as if right next to him.
Elias stepped inside, lighting a new candle. The staircase to the tower was narrow and steep. His every step was an effort against the fear. The illusions began. As he climbed, the stone walls began to stretch and distort. They were no longer straight, but curved like vertebrae, weaving a horrific geometric web. Elias felt dizzy, as if he were falling rather than climbing. He heard whispers from the stone cracks, hundreds of voices in a chaotic din, incomprehensible. But one voice stood out. "You saw Evelyn locked away. You will be locked away too. There is no way out here." Elias tightened his grip on the sketch. He remembered Alastair's words, "It cannot see what is hidden in creation." He closed his eyes. Physical sight was unreliable. He only trusted his inner feeling. He continued to climb, imagining himself stepping on solid stairs in the library. When he opened his eyes, the staircase had stabilized, but the air was colder and the scent of rotting lily of the valley was pungent. The weaver was close. Finally, he reached the tower summit. The top room was small, circular, with wind whistling through the cracks. In the center of the room was a large marble pedestal. On the pedestal was a massive brass observation device resembling an ancient telescope, but not pointing toward the sky. Instead, it was aimed at a concave mirror installed on the opposite wall. This was the projection machine of Silas Blackwood. It was designed to look into the shadow weaver's weave. Elias stepped closer. The light from his candle was drawn into the concave mirror, creating a three-dimensional image suspended in the air. The image was a nightmare. It was not an image of the future or the past, but a cross-section of the unseen weave. He saw Evelyn Blackwood, but not in flesh. She was a blurry figure, trapped in a giant spider web woven from dark matter. She was desperately trying to grasp a silver thread slipping from her hand. More horrifyingly, he saw himself in the image. He was a new figure woven into the weave, hanging beside Evelyn, his face covered in black silk and emptiness. Fear rose up, strangling his heart. This was not just an illusion, it was a prophecy of what would happen if he failed. "Look, Elias Thorne, you are mine. Your thread will make the weave perfect," the shadow weaver whispered, its voice now almost a soft groan.